Number 10. Glamorous and on the run. In 2017, Tegan Simpson managed to evade the police for 18 days after escaping from a prison farm on the Gold Coast. Her accomplice, Abigail Graff, was apprehended soon after. It started when they took off from an open prison in Nunimba Valley. They got a pretty decent head start because authorities didn't even know they were gone until they failed to show up for their routine head count at 11 p.m. By the time the cops started looking for them, they were already well on their way to the brief taste of freedom. Tegan had gotten locked up in the first place for receiving stolen goods, while her friend Abigail was in for assaulting a police officer. They didn't know each other before they were incarcerated, but they became friends fast once locked up. Seeing as the open prison wasn't really the most secure place, the pair decided that they would just take their chances and run off through the wilderness. This was despite the fact that neither were facing particularly long sentences. They could have just served their time and be done with it. Plus, Tegan, judging by her social media pictures, has been living a pretty glamorous life before landing herself in prison. She has photos on Facebook with a Mercedes, she appears to have a lot of friends, and she can be seen frolicking at the beach. At 24 years old, she was pretty normal, but when you look at her mugshots, things change pretty quickly. After a short stint in prison, and then 18 days trying desperately to escape, she was in rough shape. She almost looks now like a totally different person. Number 9. 6 days on the run. A 22-year-old woman escaped from the women's jail in Santee in 2019. After 6 days on the run, she was back in custody. The escapee is Destiny Guns, and she managed to squirrel her way out of the Las Colinas detention facility at about 5:30 p.m. 6 days prior to her escape, she had been arrested on minor charges of misdemeanor drugs and theft. But let's break down the actual escape. She was discovered missing during head count at 6:15, according to Lieutenant Sean Ray. The last time she was seen was nearly 45 minutes earlier at 5:35. Once she was gone, deputies conducted an intense search of the area. They used helicopters and dogs, but there was just no sign of her. How did she escape? It turned out later that as Destiny was returning to the facility from a medical appointment, she managed to leap over a series of fences and evade the deputies. They didn't even see her as she fled for her life. We don't know where she was while she was hiding for those 6 days, but she was caught and rebooked before the week was over. And here's where things get crazy. She was released from prison just shortly after this whole fiasco. Less than a year later, she was arrested on June 22, 2020, for murder. She was caught in Maryland stabbing someone named Chad Petrulis to death in his own apartment. Number 8. Over the wall. Kiana Barnes was serving a 25-year sentence for murder when she managed to break herself free from the Louisiana Correctional Institute for Women in January of 2013. Kiana had murdered her boyfriend in New Orleans 10 years earlier in 2003, just before she went on the run in Mexico for a full year before she was apprehended by the authorities in 2004 and sent to Louisiana. Clearly, this was not a woman who liked to be locked up. She shaved her head just before her escape so that she wouldn't be easy to recognize. She managed to escape out of her cell window and scaled the perimeter gate. And if that sounds easy, it's because it was easy. It was even the second prison break from the same facility that week. Kiana made it all the way to California before she was caught again. She even made it onto the U.S. Marshals Service 15 Most Wanted list. It was the list that got her busted, as she was recognized by cops in Los Angeles and arrested. She's since been sent back to Louisiana to serve the rest of her sentence. Number 7. Escaped for 38 years. In February of 1977, Margaret Smith walked away from the Robeson County Women's Prison. According to her, she did it because she had to protect her family. Just before she made her daring escape, she had been visited by her 7-year-old daughter. Margaret never said what it was that her daughter told her during that visit, but whatever she said, it was so serious that Margaret broke out of jail shortly after. She made it to the highway, stuck out her thumb, and hitchhiked her way back home. Do keep in mind that this was the 70s, back when it was quite a bit easier to literally just walk out of jail. This was back when Ted Bundy escaped jail twice. Plus, Margaret hadn't been in prison for anything too serious. She was convicted in 1974 of writing over $200 in fake checks. But here's the thing, she was never recaptured by the police until now. 38 years after she escaped from jail, on May 14, 2015, FBI officer Tanya S. Sconyers knocked on her door. The knock on the door was part of an operation in conjunction with the FBI and the State Department of Public Safety to locate and return over 147 inmates who escaped prison. 14 of those escapees were discovered to already be in prison, while 18 were found to be dead. Most of these escapees came from the 60s and 70s. Margaret B. Smith, after enjoying a relatively normal life, is now locked behind bars. Do you think there should be a statute of limitations on this kind of thing? After all, Margaret went to prison in the first place for writing fake checks to feed her 7 kids. She was smart enough to escape for 40 years and now has to go back to jail. Do you think that's right or wrong? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're liking the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Escape at the troubled women's prison. An inmate escaped from the most infamous women's prison in New Jersey, but freedom didn't last long. Hours later, she was tracked down by cops and dragged back to jail. According to the Hunterdon County Prosecutor's Office, Jessica Graham was already serving a sentence of 5 years for criminal mischief when she escaped. She was reported missing from the minimum security unit at the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility for Women during head count. Because she had no history of violence, there was no reason to keep her under intensive watch. Jessica used this to her advantage, sneaking out of the house where she was kept and making a desperate run out of the prison and into the surrounding area. But on foot, she didn't make it too far. The police picked her up just hours later near a restaurant in Clinton. The escape seemed like a good idea until she realized she had no mode of transportation, no food, and no proper clothes to wear. It was a pretty bogus idea anyway, considering she was about to be released. She tried to escape in November, when she had her release coming up in February. If Jessica could have just held out a few more months, she would have been a free woman. But then again, maybe things were just too horrendous in jail. After all, this is the place that has come under serious scrutiny for the male guards assaulting and violating many of the inmates. The sexual abuse problem has become so severe at this New Jersey prison that the government is actually trying to close the place down. Number 5. The helicopter escape. In 1987, 2 convicts escaped prison in one of the most dramatic breakouts in history. Ronald McIntosh used a stolen helicopter to break his girlfriend out of a federal prison. According to Ronald himself, his lover, Samantha Lopez, claimed that she was being threatened in the prison. This compelled him to do whatever he needed to get her out of there. She was sentenced to 50 years because she got caught robbing a bank. The breakout only added 5 extra years to that, which isn't really much in the grand scheme of things. But by now, you're probably wondering where Ronald got a helicopter from. The truth is that just days before he broke Samantha out of prison, he too escaped. He walked away from a prison transfer and ran. He found a helicopter, hijacked it, and then flew right into the prison yard over the barbed wired fence so that his girlfriend could climb inside. It was totally a 007 move, but it didn't end well. The pair then spent 11 days together before the police picked them up at a jewelry store in Sacramento where they were trying to get engraved wedding rings. Number 4. The Accomplice. Joyce Mitchell didn't escape from prison. Instead, she was the woman who helped 2 inmates to escape by providing them with the necessary materials. She had never been in prison before, but after she got caught helping the convicted killers escape, she was thrown in the clink for 5 years. It may not have been so bad if not for the people she helped escape. Joyce at the time was a prison worker. She became fascinated with Richard Matt and David Sweat, both of whom were incarcerated at the Clinton Correctional Facility for murder. The killers schemed together to seduce Joyce Mitchell and get her on their side. She helped provide things they would need to break out of the jail, including guns, ammunition, a compass, a hacksaw, chisels, and a complete bag of camping gear. And before the actual escape, she was getting busy with at least one of them, maybe both, in the tailor shop where she worked as the prison tailor. Richard and David used the power tools provided to cut through the back of their cells, smash through the brick wall, bust open a steam pipe, and then wriggle out of the prison and emerge through a manhole. The hunt for these guys went on for 22 days, ending with Matt getting shot and killed, and David getting taken back into custody. Number 3. The Irish Women's Escape of 1830. In 1830, 9 women escaped from an Irish prison, along with a baby. It happened on the 23rd of May, with all 9 of the convicted females serving sentences of 7 years. They were all locked up at the usual time, but when prison guards went to look in the morning, they were all gone. 4 of the women were named Mary, and one of them had an 11-month-old baby with her. 2 of the women were named Margaret. Then there was Ellen, a Bridget, and a Catherine. You can really tell what Irish people were naming their daughters back then. The guards at the jail slowly pieced together what happened and how the women escaped. Over the previous week, the 9 convicts had been working together to break out of their cells. They also had 2 men from the outside scale the prison walls in the middle of the night with a ladder, gaining easy access to the women's ward. It was actually very simple. The women only needed to bust through their cages, Then the men helped them get out of the prison with their ladders. In the end, only one of the women, Mary Hickey, was recaptured. Number 2. Escape from the Auburn Prison for Women. Nobody escaped from the Auburn Prison for Women since it opened in 1894. That was until May 8, 1920. That was when a pair of inmates made an escape straight out of a movie. Dorothy Creer was incarcerated for shooting her sweetheart in New York City after they got into a fight. She had already served 5 years, but still had 5 to go. Irene Milley was serving a similar sentence, though she was in jail for first-degree grand larceny. She had robbed a New York lawyer who she'd been working for. These two women worked together on a scheme to earn their freedom. They fashioned disguises out of materials that they scavenged at the prison. Using gray blankets, they made suits for themselves, complete with hats. They even fashioned themselves slippers so they could move silently and not leave any trails behind. Then they used a screwdriver and some strong files to break themselves out of their cells. They removed the locks from their rooms, snuck into the prison kitchen on the second floor, and hopped out of one of the windows that didn't have any bars on it. They used 3 blankets tied together to lower themselves to the ground outside. From here, the women ran into the prison yard and managed to climb over a 12-foot wall to their freedom. But their freedom didn't last for very long. They were only out of prison for about 24 hours before police tracked them down and brought them back to jail. And number 1, The Great Pretender. On August 28, 2021, Ellen Goebel escaped from the Randolph County Jail by impersonating another inmate who was due to be released. It was an impromptu scheme that amazingly paid off. The other inmate was supposed to be released just after 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, but when she didn't respond to the wake-up call, Ellen seized the opportunity. She gathered up the other inmate's belongings, kept her head down, forged the other girl's signature, and then walked straight out of the prison. When she left, she was even given the other girl's items that she had originally entered the prison with, including a debit card. Nobody knew what had happened until breakfast, when the girl who was supposed to be released finally woke up. Ellen managed to stay on the run for 9 days before she finally turned herself in to the authorities. She probably could have stayed out longer, but the police were hunting after her pretty hard. She's now being charged with escaping from custody, as well as forgery. The reason she was sent to jail in the first place was second-degree burglary, drug possession, and operating a vehicle without a license. Which of these dramatic prison breaks do you think was the most impressive? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and thanks so much for watching. For more great stuff, be sure to subscribe and check out our huge catalog of videos. See you next time.